They are not okay with this version of you. They are not okay with it. I feel like your energy has become guarded, self-contained. Unapologetically strong that this person does not know where to place themselves anymore. And the wild part is, you are not even doing anything to them. You are standing your ground. That is what this Seven of Wands is saying to me. You are not attacking. You are not chasing. You are not proving. You are refusing to be pulled back into a dynamic that once had you questioning yourself. And that has messed with them. Because this person was used to access. They were used to your softness, your explanations, your patience, your willingness to keep the door open even when they were giving you mixed signals. But now there is resistance. There is a boundary. There is this energy around you that says, you do not get to reach me the same way anymore, baby. They felt that, and I do not think you realize how they felt it. It is almost like they expected you to fold. They expected you to miss them loudly. They expected you to come back with another question, another emotional offering, another chance for them to feel important. But instead, you got quieter, stronger, harder to read. And now they are the one trying to figure out what changed. That is where the obsession starts. Because when someone believes they understand your pattern, and then you break it, you become a mystery. Suddenly, every silence means something. Every pause feels loaded. Every bit of distance has them wondering whether you are done, whether somebody else has your attention, whether they pushed too far. And this Seven of Wands energy is not loud confidence. It is earned confidence. It is the kind that comes from being tired of betraying yourself just to keep a connection alive. You are protecting your peace now, and they are reading that protection as rejection, because they benefited from the version of you who had no defenses. But here is the part they would never admit. Your boundaries did not just scare them. They made you more desirable. Now they cannot reach you without effort. They cannot assume you will always be there. And I feel like this person is about to reveal how much your absence has been getting under their skin. Because I feel like they are checking, quietly, indirectly, looking for some sign that you are still emotionally where they left you. They may be watching what you post, noticing when you are online, rereading old conversations, or asking questions through people who do not even realize they are being used to gather information. They are searching for access without having to admit that they want it. And that is why this Nine of Cups reversed is showing up here. Because on the outside, this person may still be acting satisfied, unbothered, like everything is fine. But underneath that performance, there is an emotional emptiness they cannot distract themselves from anymore. Something they thought would fulfill them is not fulfilling them. Something they assumed they could live without is suddenly taking up more space in their mind than they expected. You, not because you manipulated them, not because you played some game. You did not disappear to force a reaction. You simply stopped overextending yourself. There is a difference. You stopped giving them constant reassurance. You stopped making it easy for them to avoid accountability. You stopped filling every silence they created. And now they are sitting inside those silences themselves. Baby, they do not like it in there. Because the Seven of Wands showed your defense going up. But this Nine of Cups reversed is showing what happened to them when that access came down. Their comfort was disturbed. Their confidence was disturbed. Even the story they told themselves about how much you needed them is being disturbed. Meanwhile, you may be calmer than you have been in a long time. You are not checking for every reaction. You are not trying to interpret every little thing. You are returning to yourself. And the more settled you become, the more restless they seem to get, because they can no longer feel your energy reaching for them. So now they replay things. The conversation where your tone changed. The moment you stopped explaining. The last time they tested your patience, and you did not respond the way you normally would. They are looking backward, trying to find the exact point where they lost their position in your life. And I feel like they may attempt something subtle before they become direct. A reaction, a casual message. Some small opening designed to see whether the old version of you is still available. But that is not the version waiting for them anymore. And their fixation is not only coming from missing you. It is coming from the realization that they may have completely misunderstood your softness. They thought it meant you would stay the same forever. They did not realize you were becoming someone they would no longer know how to handle, because they confused your patience with permission. They thought that because you stayed calm, you would keep accepting confusion. Because you tried to understand them, they believed they could keep avoiding the deeper conversation. Because you forgave before, they assumed forgiveness would always be waiting for them, no matter how carelessly they handled you. They mistook love for dependence. And that is why this chariot is so important here. This is not you running from what happened. This is you taking control of your own direction. Both of those horses are pulling with power, but your energy is the one deciding where all of that power goes now. Before, so much of it went toward them, toward understanding their silence, toward explaining your feelings in 5 different ways, hoping one of them would finally reach them, toward trying to repair something you did not break by yourself. And maybe you did ask for clarity more than once. Maybe you did come back to the conversation. Maybe you did give another opportunity after telling yourself you were done. But baby, that was not because you had no power. It was because you cared. You were choosing love over pride. You were choosing honesty over games. You were trying to make sure you did not walk away from something meaningful just because it became difficult. There is nothing weak about that. The problem began when loving them required you to keep abandoning yourself. When being understanding meant swallowing your needs. When keeping the peace meant staying quiet about the things that were hurting you. That is when something inside of you changed. You realized that loyalty without mutual effort becomes a cage. And now this person is confused because they built their confidence around the belief that you would always be the one who cared more. You would wait longer. You would forgive faster. You would eventually reach out because your heart would not allow you to leave things unfinished. But the chariot says, you learned how to carry an unfinished feeling without letting it control your life. That is what they did not prepare for. Now they are looking back at your old messages differently. They are remembering the softness in your voice, the times you gave them a chance to be honest without attacking them, the moments you practically handed them the truth and waited for them to meet you there. And they did not. They delayed. They deflected. They acted like there would always be another opening. But there is one moment they keep returning to. One thing they said, or did not say, when they could feel you pulling away. And deep down, they know that was the moment everything changed. And I feel like they can remember the exact feeling of that moment. Maybe you reached out with something honest, and they answered you coldly. Maybe you needed reassurance, and they gave you distance. Maybe you opened the door for a real conversation, and they chose silence because they assumed you would try again later. They thought there would be more time to explain, more time to soften what they said, more time to return after they had finished avoiding their own feelings. They treated that moment like it was temporary because they believed your availability was permanent. But it was not. And this world reversed is showing me something that never fully closed for them. Not because you failed to give closure, but because they know they left something important unfinished. They walked away from a conversation they should have stayed present for. They withheld something they should have said. They let their pride, fear, or inconsistency speak for them. And now their mind keeps circling back. They knew you were tired. They knew your energy was changing. They knew that particular silence felt different from all the other silences. They knew. Maybe they did not understand the full consequence at the time, but they felt it. There was something in your response, or your lack of response, that told them you were no longer going to carry the emotional weight for both of you. You did not leave to punish them. You left because disappointment had become a pattern. Because every new chance started looking too much like the last one. Because you could not keep presenting your heart to someone who handled it like there would always be another version available. And now that memory has weight. They remember what they said. They remember how long they waited. They remember seeing your message and deciding they would deal with it later. But later came, and you were different. That is what haunts them. Because now they can see how easy it would have been to choose honesty. To reassure you, to say, I do not want to lose this. To meet you halfway while you were still willing to stand there. But they did not. And I feel like the regret is becoming sharper. Because they are not only imagining what they lost. They are imagining someone else recognizing what they overlooked. Someone else listening the first time. Someone else protecting the heart they kept testing. Baby, that thought is eating at them. Because the deepest regret may not be that the old connection ended. It may be realizing that someone else could receive the stronger, wiser, protected version of you that their mistakes helped create. And that possibility is bothering them more than they want to admit. Because now they are wondering who gets your attention. Who gets the version of you that is no longer exhausted from explaining yourself? Who gets to hear you laugh without feeling the heaviness they kept placing between you? Who gets the softness they took for granted? And this Six of Wands reversed tells me their confidence is slipping. They may have once believed they would always hold a certain position in your mind, even if you were distant, even if you were upset, even if you tried to move forward. They assumed some part of you would still be looking back, still waiting for them to recognize what they had. But now they are not sure, and that uncertainty is where the jealousy grows. It does not even require another person. That is the part they may not understand yet. They could be jealous of your peace. Jealous of the way you seem more focused. Jealous of the fact that your days no longer revolve around whether they show up correctly. Maybe your friendships are filling you now. Maybe your work is pulling something alive out of you again. Maybe you are sleeping better, taking care of yourself differently, finding pleasure in things that have nothing to do with being chosen by them. Baby, that is the real competition. They are not only competing with the idea of another lover, they are competing with a life that feels better without the confusion they brought into it. And how do they compete with that? How do they pull you back into uncertainty when you have finally experienced what calm feels like? How do they make mixed signals exciting again when peace has started feeling more attractive than intensity? They cannot rely on the old tricks. That is why this energy feels shaky. The Six of Wands reversed can be that private bruise to the ego when someone no longer receives the reaction they expected. They may be wondering whether you stopped admiring them, whether you stopped seeing them as irreplaceable, whether you have finally seen the difference between someone wanting your attention and someone deserving your presence. And I feel like jealousy could make them move. They may reach for something familiar, a memory, a compliment, a sudden emotional confession, anything that could remind you of the bond and test whether it still has power over you. But watch how they approach, because their next move will tell you everything. It will show whether they have actually changed, or whether they simply cannot stand that their access to you is gone. And I feel like this person may try to make their return feel casual, like nothing serious happened. A simple, "How have you been?" a reaction to something you posted. An inside joke they know used to soften you. Maybe a message that sounds nostalgic enough to pull you back into remembering the good parts before you have time to think about the whole story. Because sometimes people do not come back with accountability first. They come back with familiarity. And this wheel is showing me a cycle trying to turn again. The same energy returning to see whether it can still get the same result, whether one message can reopen the door, whether one emotional moment can place you back inside a pattern you worked hard to leave. But you are different now. That matters. Words that once would have had your heart racing may not hit the same way anymore. A vague apology may not feel comforting. A sudden confession may not feel romantic. Even something you once prayed to hear could make your body tense before your mind understands why. Because your body remembers the inconsistency. It remembers what happened after the promises. It remembers how many times intensity appeared without stability behind it. It remembers being pulled close just long enough to believe, only to be left questioning everything again. So pay attention to the difference. Someone who values you will not rush you past what happened. They will not act confused about your boundaries. They will be specific. Humble. Willing to name what they did without making you responsible for making them feel better about it. Someone who only wants access may come in strong, but not deep. They may say they miss you without saying what they understand now. They may create urgency. They may make it sound like this moment has to happen immediately because they know time gives you space to see clearly. Baby, real change does not need to pressure you. It can handle your hesitation. It can respect the fact that trust does not return just because feelings do. It understands that wanting you back and being ready to love you correctly are not the same thing. And I feel like you are going to recognize that difference faster than they expect. Not because you have become cold, because you have become honest with yourself. The wheel may bring the old energy back around, but it does not mean you have to repeat the old response. And here is what may shock both of you. This person could finally say the exact thing you once desperately needed to hear. But when they say it now, you may not feel relief. You may feel how far beyond it you have already grown, and that realization may hit you quietly. Not with anger, not with some dramatic need to prove that you no longer care. It may feel softer than that, sadder even. Because there was a time when those words would have meant everything to you. Baby, you wanted this moment. You wanted them to admit that they were scared. You wanted them to tell you that you mattered. You wanted to hear that the distance was not because you were too much, too emotional, too difficult to love. You wanted them to finally confirm what your heart had been trying to believe the entire time. And now they may finally say it. But this star is showing me that you have already given that validation to yourself. That is why the moment feels different. You may listen to them and feel tenderness. You may understand that they were struggling with things they did not know how to name. You may even feel compassion for the version of them that kept running from something real. But compassion is not the same as access. Understanding is not the same as returning. And healing does not always make you want the old connection back. Sometimes healing simply allows you to look at it without needing it to become something different. That is your power now. Not slamming the door so they can hear it. Not making them suffer the way you suffered. Not pretending their words mean nothing when some part of you may still be moved by them. Your power is being able to hear what you once begged for without betraying the person you became while waiting. Because the star is not desperate for proof. It is open, but it is not empty. It can hope without abandoning reality. It can remain soft without becoming available to the same pain. And I think that is what this person did not expect. They believed that if they ever became honest, you would immediately return to your old position. That one confession would erase the waiting. That their regret would become your responsibility to comfort. But you do not need their obsession to prove that you were valuable. You do not need them losing sleep to confirm that they mishandled you. You do not need their return to make your healing real. That is the victory, and I feel like your calm response, or even your lack of response, is going to confront them with something much deeper than romantic regret. Because without your attention, without your forgiveness, without your emotional focus, constantly reflecting their importance back to them, this person may no longer know who they are in your world. And that loss of identity is shaking them more than losing the relationship itself. Because for a long time, your reactions told them who they were. When you reached out, they felt wanted. When you forgave them, they felt redeemable. When you kept trying to understand, they felt important enough to be waited for. Even your frustration reassured them that they still had a place inside of you. But now, you are no longer reflecting that version of them back. And this 9 of Wands is showing me why your independence feels so threatening. You have been through enough with this person to recognize the pattern before it reaches you. You are not standing behind this boundary because you hate them. You are standing here because you remember what happened every time you lowered it too quickly. You learned, and they can feel that you learned. This person did not only lose your attention, they lost the certainty that they could still affect you whenever they wanted to. They lost the comfort of believing they were irreplaceable. They lost the version of themselves that existed when you were always emotionally available to confirm their importance. That is why missing you is more complicated than they admit. Because yes, I do feel like they care. I do feel like there are real emotions here, but those emotions may have become tangled with entitlement, with fear, with the belief that loving you somehow gave them permanent ownership over your softness. It did not, and now they have to ask themselves a question they may have avoided for a long time. Do they miss you as a person, or do they miss the way your love made them feel about themselves? Baby, there is a difference. Missing you means wanting to understand what you experienced, wanting to protect what they once mishandled, being willing to meet the stronger version of you without asking you to become smaller so they can feel secure again. Missing access is different. Missing access wants the old reaction, the quick forgiveness, the emotional proof. It wants to know that no matter how far they wandered, you would still be standing in the same place. But the 9 of Wands says, you are not standing in the same place. You are standing wiser. And I feel like that is forcing this person toward a decision. They can no longer approach you halfway and expect your love to carry them the rest of the distance. They either confront the parts of themselves that created this separation and rise to the standard you now hold, or they push harder, become louder, and try to break through your boundary, because they cannot accept that the old version of this connection is gone. And what they do next will show you which path they chose. Because if this person is willing to grow, you will feel it in the way they slow down. They will stop trying to force a reaction. They will stop making every conversation about how badly they feel now that you are gone. They will become more honest about what they did, more patient with your hesitation, and more willing to accept that access to you is no longer automatic. They will understand that rebuilding is not the same as returning. But this Queen of Wands reversed is showing me the other possibility too. This can be someone whose confidence has been bruised, so instead of becoming accountable, they become performative. Louder, more intense, more determined to prove that they can still get your attention. They may try jealousy. They may suddenly act desired by everyone. They may post something meant for you to see, disappear so you notice, or come back with a dramatic promise because they are hoping intensity will do what consistency never did. Baby, do not confuse urgency with transformation. Someone can want you desperately and still not know how to value you correctly. Someone can be obsessed with losing you and still resist doing the work required to keep you safely. Being desired is not the same as being respected, and your job is not to decode every move they make. You do not have to study every message, every pause, every change in tone, trying to determine whether they finally understand. You have already spent enough energy translating what this person refused to say clearly. Let their behavior speak now. If they have changed, they will not need you to lower your standard to make their growth believable. If they have not, your boundary will expose it quickly. That is what your badass energy really is. It is not cruelty. It is not revenge. It is not pretending you never loved them. It is refusing to negotiate against your own peace just because someone finally became afraid of losing you. And I feel like this person is reaching a point where they cannot remain neutral. Your silence is forcing something to the surface. They either meet you with truth, or they reveal how much of this was always about control. Either way, you win clarity, because the final truth is not whether this person comes back. It is not whether they apologize, chase, confess, or finally admit that they underestimated you. The final truth is what your transformation has awakened in every person who once believed your softness meant you would never leave. And what it awakened is not something they can put back to sleep. Because once people see you choose yourself, they can no longer pretend they did not know your value. They can no longer reduce your loyalty to weakness. They can no longer tell themselves that you stayed because you had nowhere else to go. You stayed because you loved deeply. You left because you finally loved yourself deeply too. And this page of wands is showing me the part of you that came back to life when you stopped pouring all of your energy into being understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. There is movement here. Curiosity, a spark returning. You are beginning to remember that your life is bigger than this connection, bigger than their silence, bigger than their regret, bigger than whether they come back and say everything correctly. That is what makes you unforgettable now. They remember the warmth you gave them. They remember how safe your patience felt. They remember the way you tried to see the best in them, even when their behavior kept showing you something else. But now that warmth has a boundary around it, and the contrast is tearing at them, because they expected the loss of them to break you. Instead, it introduced you to yourself. They thought distance would make you chase harder. Instead, it made you hear your own voice again. They thought your softness guaranteed permanent access. It did not, baby. You do not have to punish them for what they did not appreciate. You do not have to prove that you are happier. You do not have to perform indifference. You do not have to make them jealous, make them suffer, or make them understand. Your peace already said enough. Your standards said enough. The fact that they can no longer approach you with the same carelessness says enough. And maybe there is compassion here. Maybe you understand why they were afraid. Maybe some part of you still wishes they had become ready before you became tired. But compassion does not require self-abandonment. You can care and still choose distance. You can forgive and still require change. You can remember the love without volunteering for the pain again. That is the version of you they cannot stop thinking about. Not because you became cruel, because you became clear. You stopped asking permission to have needs. You stopped shrinking to remain lovable. You stopped offering sacred access to people who treated it like something ordinary. And now they know. They know your softness was a gift. They know your presence was never guaranteed. They know the person they underestimated has become the person they cannot forget. You did not make them obsessed by trying harder. You became unforgettable when you finally chose yourself.